Welcome to Real Estate Radio LA. I am your host, Gil Azcarate, the host that gets you the most for your real estate right here in Los Angeles. Happy birthday to me, 2 years on the radio. Who would have thought it? Who would have thunk it? And here we are with what I think is a very unique topic, and it's amazing that nobody else thought of it before me. Real estate is what everybody loves to talk about at parties. When you ask somebody if they've got any kids, they say no, but I do have a 2-bedroom bungalow in Pasadena, and they show you pictures of that. So real estate is my love. I've been doing it for 25 years. I'm an investor. I worked for a little company called Remax. I owned a little company called Intero, which is a high-end real estate office up in Northern California. And I am here to serve. And first of all, because there's a bunch of attorneys out there, my DRE number is 0129-8646. This show is for entertainment and information purposes only and not intended to give you legal or business advice, so please consult your qualified professional and pay them a lot of money for something I am going to do for free. Now, it's real estate. I love it. I have to stay in my lane, and I don't. It's hard for me sometimes because I want to go off on all the craziness that's going on right now politically and with our Governor Gruesome and everything that's going on with interest rates and gas prices. But I try to stay in my lane in real estate related. But today I have a special guest, so I'm going to be able to dip my toe into a little politics and not get in trouble. So David Hernandez is my special guest. A lot of you may know him for being a show host every Saturday for the Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club. And it's a 2-hour show, and I only have a half hour. So, David, I am so happy to have you here, buddy. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. And, first of all, congratulations. A 2-year anniversary, to be able to be on the scene and giving out information. And I think, and you're right, when you talked about real estate being the American dream. I mean, your parents immigrated from Colombia, and my parents were from Lincoln Heights, which is just a little east of downtown LA, and we moved to the San Fernando Valley in 1955. And that American dream, it's always about having a place that you can call home, and it's not being a renter or being an employee. And what we've seen more often than not is that the language of the Hispanic community, whether they're Colombian or Guatemalan or Mexican or Cuban, is not Spanish. It's hard work.
Yep.
And owning your own home, that's the fruit of your labor. And so real estate and the ownership of real estate and private property, I mean, that is exactly what you said, protecting the American dream. So, congratulations on doing that for 2 years.
Thank you. Can I say amen? Can you still say amen in this country?
You still can.
See?
You still can see, and then amen. But you know what? First, let's start off with this because I want to get into it. But I always say, who's the man behind the message? Tell us a little bit about you. You're a Valley guy like me. We actually live close to each other. Your office is in Woodland Hills. My office is in Woodland Hills. And we'll get into everything you've done, but tell us a little bit about you. You were born here. Your family was born here.
Right, family from Lincoln Heights. And when I was 7, we moved to the San Fernando Valley to a brand new set of tract homes right alongside what is now the 170 freeway. When we moved there in 1955, the 170 freeway wasn't.
North Hollywood?
Yeah, the Hollywood freeway wasn't there. So this was basically near Whitsett between Roscoe and Sherman Way. So it was a great time. I think my parents paid $13,000 for their home.
Yeah, I think they overpaid.
They wanted to. My mother wanted to move more to the West Valley, a little more prestigious, but they couldn't afford it. It was probably maybe $500 or $1,000 more. But so we moved from a Mexican neighborhood in Lincoln Heights to a Jewish neighborhood in North Hollywood or Sun Valley adjacent, and it was great. So that's where I grew up. I grew up here and went to the local public schools. When I graduated from Poly High School, we got our 66 reunion coming up in October.
Holy moly.
And,
I almost said something else.
And like I said, I'm old enough to be your father. And joined the Navy at 18. Got assigned to an air squadron right out at the Naval Air Station, Norfolk, Virginia. And I went all over the world. Spain, Italy, France, England, you name it, the Philippines many times. Yeah. This was during the Vietnam War, and then came back to North Hollywood.
Yeah.
And,
well, two things I want to say, because you and I haven't had this in-depth of conversation, but it's amazing. So that was 1966, you said?
Yeah.
So 1967, my family comes here from Colombia. And same thing, we're in L.A., And my mom is sort of looking around saying, a lot of Hispanics. My mom's not a racist. She just gets it, right? There's a lot of Hispanics. LA was really populated, working class. And she says, I'm going to go to the Valley. And eventually we end up in Woodland Hills, a very Jewish community, right? And I've talked about this before. I was the only Hispanic on my soccer team in 1982, right?
Yeah.
And it, you know what's so funny? It never occurred to me. So I'm doing stand-up comedy.
It wasn't an issue.
It wasn't an issue. It didn't even occur to me. I'm doing stand-up comedy like 10 years ago, and all of a sudden I thought, God, that's funny, right? The only Hispanic, right? So the Valley, we've seen it grow. We've seen it go through some things. A lot of us, we get further from LA to have a better quality of life, and we're in the Valley.
No, absolutely.
Right?
I mean, like I said, we could just barely make it there. I mean, Van Nuys Boulevard was like the Beverly Hills of the San Fernando Valley. I mean, I couldn't afford to go to the Fox Walk-In Theater on Van Nuys Boulevard. I had to walk over to the Lankershim Theater on Lankershim and Saticoy.
Different times.
And so a different time, and I think, and that is reflective of the political, getting into politics, the political leadership or lack of it. But things are the way they are because they're designed to be that way. And that's the stark truth that people don't realize is, how did it get so bad? It's because there is so much money to be made off of blight, off of poverty, off of crime, off of homelessness. It's like politicians don't want to solve the problem because it cuts off a funding stream to special interest groups, to nonprofits that they have that are politically connected to. So that's why we're suffering. And as a result, the home ownership and the value of a home gets depressed. I mean, you've been in the real estate business for long. You know that if it's a high crime area, that's going to have a direct impact on the value of the home.
Of course.
So naturally,
it makes sense.
You have crimes that are being committed and are not being reported because they do not want it to impact the property value because they want the tax money.
Yeah. And one of the things I loved about your story is, if you haven't traveled, and I've traveled a lot and haven't traveled enough, right? But if you haven't traveled or lived in another country, you don't know what you have here. Everybody wants to come here, but the only people that complain are the ones that are here.
Yeah.
This is the greatest country in the world. Are we perfect? Absolutely not. Are we going through some stuff? Yes, but you are so right. These politicians create the problem to get all this billions and billions of dollars, right? Billions, right? When I talk about the difference between a million and a million seconds, 17 days. A billion seconds, 32.8 years.
Oh,
so when
I've never heard it put that way because that puts it in perspective. Because you're right, we're talking billions. I mean, what did we have? The homeless. We had Proposition H and Proposition HH, so that's like $2.7 billion to address the homelessness, and especially the bond measures, the bond, and that directly impacts private property ownership.
Yeah,
and
that's going to take care of everything, right?
No,
Money takes care of everything, And I'm a big fan of Aaron from California Deluxe Windows, right? And I've had him on the show too, and we've just become friends. And I love learning from people, especially because they've traveled, especially because they see the world in a different place or see our world in a different place. And he said one thing, and it really impacted me. The problem with the United States is we have too much money. Isn't that crazy? The problem with the other countries are they don't have enough. We have so much, and we think money is going to fix the problem. And it never does. It just corrupts and makes it worse. And then you end up having poor neighborhoods with a lot of homelessness, poor neighborhoods with a lot of crime, and then the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and we're struggling.
And it's the shrinking middle class. And that's what this is, and that was the middle class's ability. I mean, there's where upward mobility came from. And like you, I used the GI Bill when I was 24, and I bought a home in North Hollywood. Now, I had to pay a lot more than my parents. I paid $27,000.
Oh, you overpaid too. What year was that?
So that was, 1974. I was working at the LAPD garage in Van Nuys at Morning Watch doing mechanical work and gassing up cars. But I was making like $700 a month, and I was able to qualify and buy a home with no money down, just those stupid closing costs that you people want. And
you people, how did I get dragged into this?
And I had to sell my beautiful 750 Honda motorcycle in order to pay the $800 closing costs on the property.
You remember what your payment was?
It was some ridiculous amount, maybe like 200 a month or less,
Yeah.
150
But
a
it's
month.
stressful.
Yeah.
It's stressful. I remember my parents paid $22,000 in Winnetka for their first house, right? And you're right. They didn't buy, I forget what neighborhood, because it was $2,000 or $3,000 more, right? Just $2,000 or $3,000. But they're like, I don't have the money. So that's what makes America great, where you can come here and 3 years later buy a home, or you can go into the military and get a VA loan or GI Bill, and you can get educated. And that's the thing that makes me sad, that people just don't appreciate what we had. Travel. I tell people all the time, travel. Just go to a bank and try to mail something in another country.
Yeah.
It never gets there. It gets stolen, and you have a 3-hour line in the bank on a Friday. So let's get back to, tell me a little bit about how you got involved in politics. You are so active. I was on your Facebook page and just saw all the things that you've done and are doing. Tell me a little bit about how you got into public service.
Well, like most people, I mean, I had a family. I was busy. I had a business. I was an independent insurance adjuster for 25 years. Never paid attention to politics. In 2002, my 94-year-old neighbor said, "How come there's never a Republican to vote for Congress in our area?" And I had no idea. I mean, I was that unengaged or disengaged from the process. So I started asking around, and people said, "Because you can't win." And so I went down to the county recorder's office, and I said, "What do you have to do to run for Congress?" Because as a business person, I didn't think it was a good business practice to not give your competition. And so Howard Berman was the congressman at that time. No one had challenged him in 10 years. And so I went down to the county recorder's office and, "What do you have to do to run for Congress? Do I have to have some special degree? Do I have to get somebody's permission? Do I have to belong to a certain class?"
How old were you about this time?
That was in 2002.
So
that was
a late bloomer.
A late bloomer.
Yeah.
And something that really happened, that was just the second amazing thing, when I talked about being an American, I didn't need anybody's permission. Yeah. All I had to do was fill out the paperwork. Great. What other country can you do that in?
That's amazing. I'll tell you how I became a Republican. It really was because when you're not involved and not engaged, you don't know what that means, right? It's a different language, right? And I remember I was at Pierce College, 1983, and I said, "Oh, I'm going to register to vote." Wow. I was so excited, so happy. And there's a lady there, and she checks it off, and Hispanic. And I said, I think I'm more Republican, right? Because Ronald Reagan.
You were ahead of your time.
Right. And she literally says to me, "Wait a minute, you're Hispanic. Hispanics are Democrats." And I was feisty back then. I said, "How dare you? How dare you?" Anyways, we got to take a break because I'm getting hot. I get hot under the collar. We'll be back right after this little message about me. Welcome back to Real Estate Radio LA. I've got the special guest, David Hernandez, here with me live and in studio, and I'm really excited that it is our time to spend some time talking about Republicans and Hispanics. And I told you, it's an epiphany when you sort of figure it out, right? When you sort of say, what is a Republican? What do we stand for? What is a Democrat? There's some certain core values, and there's people that usually are somebody in your life that really explains it to you and sort of defines it. In my life, it was a guy named Larry Graves. I was in my 20s. He was in his late 70s, and he was my sales manager, and we just became great friends. He was a veteran. He was exciting. He told me about Rush Limbaugh, and we were in the car doing sales calls, and he just summed it up for me in a way that I understood, and that's when I really, really knew what I was doing. So what was that moment in your life when you defined, because Hispanics, right, tend to be Democrat, which is the most insulting thing in the world, the most racist thing in the world, right? So like Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you're not black.
Yeah.
Oh my God, who says that, right?
Well, and that's the reality, because what people, like I said, people are busy. They're involved with their children, with work. So many people. I mean, it's so hard these times. People are working two jobs, 3 jobs, or doing. They assume that that people who look like them would represent them in a manner that they would like to be represented, and that is so far from the truth. Because with our organization, our basis is based on family, faith, and free enterprise.
Amen.
Now,
hard work.
That is not necessarily just a Republican set of values, but I think that is with most people who are honest, and most especially within Hispanics, because that hard work, like your parents, like my parents. On my birth certificate, my father's occupation is listed as a banana cutter, because his stepfather worked at the produce mart downtown, and they used to bring these big train car loads in full of those banana stalks, and he had to cut them up so to get them ready to go off to the market.
Right.
And he went to school at night and got a job as a clerk at an insurance company. And when he retired, he was vice president of that company. And then he went on and started his own business, was the first Spanish-speaking independent insurance company in California.
Wow.
And so, you didn't have a lot of Spanish-speaking adjusters, but you had a lot of people who spoke Spanish getting car accidents.
That's right.
And so he went from his little house on Sichel Street, moved to the San Fernando Valley, and then ended up with a beautiful condo in Long Beach on Bayshore Drive, and a boat docked in the marina. Now, that wasn't because of affirmative action.
No.
That was because of sweat equity.
Of course.
And
right?
that is the language of the Hispanics, and that is what we as Republicans want to protect, rather than the Democrats' leadership that is trying to erase that and move away from
and divide us.
Yeah.
Right. And all of a sudden we're racist because we want to secure the border, or because we, are pro-life. I mean, it's what happens in the family, right? And that's why
Absolutely.
I think Hispanics are waking up, and that's what I love what you're doing, David. I really, really do. First of all, thank you for your service in the military. But after that, what you've been doing, I know you ran for, was it Congress? Or you ran for?
I ran for, when people said, David, you're like the perennial candidate. How many offices have you run for? And I said, well, one less than Abraham Lincoln and one more than Richard Nixon. But in the end, they didn't give up, and they're both called Mr. President.
Yep.
So for me, each time I've run for office, it's never been whether or not I was going to win or lose. Is it going to make a difference?
Right.
And so I'm looking back now, some 22 years or 21 years from being directly involved in politics, is the relationships that I have been able to develop throughout the years, that I could take that, and now I'm helping other people run for office.
You're the kingmaker.
Well, not the kingmaker,
you
but
are the one that's helping
I'm
people.
like the maitre d'.
Yeah, okay.
I'm the maitre d' of politics.
That's how humble. That's how humble.
Because I'm not. For me to take somebody to meet a donor that was somebody that would contribute a maximum contribution, that doesn't take away. It doesn't jeopardize me. No. I mean, I truly want people to get involved, and especially I want good people to get involved in politics. Because if good people don't get involved in politics, it doesn't stay a vacuum. We end up with what we have today, and what people don't realize. I mean, we just had a special election in the San Fernando Valley to replace Nuri Martinez. So you have a city council member that won that seat with less than 9,000 votes out of 118,000 registered voters to one of the most powerful positions in the city. So that's all of the commercial businesses in Sun Valley, all of in Panorama City and Van Nuys, Lake Balboa. Look at all of the people. Somebody who got less than 9,000 votes is going to impact. So people, what can people do? They need to vote, because they don't realize that their vote is now more important than ever. If they want to volunteer, fine. If not, fine. If they want to donate or not. But if they vote, they will make a difference.
Yeah, and not in person. I heard something the other day that was very interesting. When Republicans want to vote in person, right? Where Democrats are doing in mail-in ballots. But when you sign up for a mail-in ballot, you find out about all of these elections that aren't the big ones. That people. That's why 9,000 people showed up, because 100,000 people didn't even know it was happening. Yeah. And that is sad, and that's why we're not really making a difference. But so we talked about this. So 3 things somebody can do. Definitely vote, right?
Definitely vote.
Get involved.
They can recruit somebody they can run for office, or they can recruit somebody to run for office, or they can support somebody who wants to run for office.
Right.
The Republican Party in California and especially in LA County, it is what it is. I don't complain about them. But all of the things that they're not doing, when we formed our Hispanic Republican Club, was let's go ahead and do what we think other people should be doing, but they're not. They're not going to change. Yeah. The cavalry's not coming. We're the cavalry. Right. So that's why when I looked at the voter rolls in L.A. County and I saw 13 of the 24 assembly seats had no Republican running in the race. Yeah. And it was like, well, you're letting all of those races go unchallenged. All those Democrats they've won their race at the end of the filing. They can raise millions of dollars. They contribute it to the state Democrat Party or to the national party, and they take that money and they can give unlimited funds to targeted races to wipe out the other Republicans in competitive districts. So we started a program that leave no assembly district behind. And so we went out and we recruited people to run for office. Were they going to win? No, but they were going to give people the opportunity to vote for somebody. They were going to be the ambassadors within their area where their race is, and they get to hear what Republican about rather than just what the leftist media is trying to say who we are.
And one of the things that you guys do is you pay their fees,
right?
I mean, these are great people that don't know how.
In order to run for office, there is a filing fee that you have to pay. At local office, it's like $300, and you get like 500 signatures. But for Assembly, Senate, or Congress, it's upwards of $1,200 to $1,500. Well, if someone is going to get in a race because they want to make a difference, why not help them out? And so in the last election cycle, our little club paid out over $17,000 in filing fees and direct contributions to candidates.
And you had some winners too.
Well, because what we wanted to do is we wanted to show people, look, we hear that Republicans aren't going out in communities of color. Not only are we going out there, we are recruiting people to run from Lincoln Heights, from East LA, from South LA, from Frogtown. I mean, from all over. So we have candidates that are running. We had our second vice chair, Jack Guerrero. Jack Guerrero, son of immigrants, farm workers, factory workers, grew up in Cudahy on his own, went to Harvard, went to Stanford, graduated. He ran for state treasurer in this last election, got 4.5 million votes with less than a $40,000 budget.
Wow.
That is the future of especially Republicans in California.
That is fantastic, David. Unfortunately, I got to sell real estate because I am not bought and paid for like our politicians. I have to we're self-funded. Your show is self-funded, 2 hours, again, every Saturday from 8 to 10. Right. The Los Angeles Hispanic Republican Club. I am your humble servant, your real estate agent to the stars. You're all stars to me. I've got a bunch of great stuff coming up. Some investment properties, $4 million for a developer. If you're that big out there and you want something that's not on the market, please reach out to me. I also got a fixer-upper in a neighborhood that is up and coming. Let's just say that. And it is about $1.2 million. It is a fixer. It's a foreclosure. So if you're interested in that, but if you are selling real estate and you have an FHA loan or a VA loan, please call me and I guarantee to sell your house in 59 days or it's free. And any first responders, call me and you get a 50% discount on a listing commission. So this is Gil Azcarate, eXp Realty and Real Estate Radio LA. David, thank you so much for coming here. God bless you, everybody. Hey, JJ, can we still say God bless you?
You still can.
You can? Well, God bless you, everybody. God bless America and God bless our troops.